So the Trump administration is making an attempt to bar any trans women from being placed in women's correctional facilities and to transfer any transgender women in female correctional facilities into men's correctional facilities. And there is no talk in any of these statements about what to do with transgender men in prison. So I want to talk to you guys about a term called V-coding. And I've seen this term floating around in very vague discussions online. So I went and found a paper from the Maurer School of Law at Indiana University that is at the top of my link tree that goes into quite a lot of detail about the violence that trans women face in the prison complex. But on pages 314 and 315, it particularly discusses V-coding, which is essentially when transgender women are placed in cells with male inmates who are particularly violent, and they are the CEOs and the officers in the prisons condone those men raping these transgender inmates repeatedly, sometimes every single day, as a way to placate them and to try and lower violence between male inmates. So they are used as sexual objects without any of their consent. They are often also subjected to repeated and violent strip searches and forced to shower and forced to masturbate for COs in front of other officers, in front of prisoners. And the paper goes on to describe that this is such a common practice that for many trans women, this is just a guaranteed part of their experience during their sentence. It also talks about the alternative being these transgender inmates being placed in solitary confinement to protect them from general population, which often results in other forms of violence in which they have no witnesses, and they are often also treated harsher because they are in solitary containment. And so the main reason that I want to share this with all of you is so that if you see this term floating around, you have a source to go look at where it's talked about, and also so that if you're on the fence about this discussion about where transgender women in prisons should be placed, that you know if you feel they shouldn't be put in women's prisons to protect those women from sexual violence, that you are still condoning an egregious and horrifying form of sexual violence. That is very much rooted in the way that conservative transphobic lawmakers wish to see trans women used in the world, which is as masturbatory tools of sexual violence for the patriarchy. Thank you for mentioning this, because this exact point is actually also talked about in the paper that I cited. It also talks about how inmates in women's facilities and men's facilities are often given added charges to their sentences for engaging in consensual same-sex activity. Sometimes these are sexual assault charges. They can also be put on sex offender registries for engaging in consensual sex acts with one another. And it talks about how sometimes transgender women are actually punished and have sentences and have charges added to their sentences and time added to their sentences for refusing sexual advances from prisoners or from COs. So thank you very much for mentioning this. I truly cannot explain how horrific the things that are detailed in that paper are, but this is another really wonderful point that is discussed.